Will expensive medicines finally get some relief? How can the government tighten the screws with the help of the Essential Commodities Act? Imagine this. It is 2 o'clock at night. In a small town pharmacy, a father is asking for fever syrup for his child. But the shopkeeper hesitates and says, the medicine is available? Yes. But the next batch is going to be more expensive. We have to use the stock carefully. From the outside, it sounds like an ordinary conversation, but the real fear is hidden right here. Because if the raw material used behind the tablets, syrups, injections, and life-saving medicines available at the medical store suddenly becomes expensive, if the supply chain starts breaking down, containers start falling short, and some people begin holding back stock, then the price of medicine can become a bigger problem than the illness itself. And that is the question floating in the air today. Will the government use the Essential Commodities Act to rein in the prices of bulk drugs and APIs? Or is the world of medicines about to enter another expensive phase? This story is not just about the pharma industry, it is the story of every family that depends on regular medicines. India is counted among the world's largest suppliers of generic drugs. Medicines made in the country do not go only to patients in India, but India's manufacturing also plays a major role in supply chains across the world. But behind this great strength, there is also an uncomfortable truth. India remains heavily dependent on imports, especially from China, for many critical APIs and drug intermediates. According to an official reply given in Parliament in March 2026, there are many APIs in which 70% or more of India's imports have continued to come from China. That means if geopolitical tensions, shipping disruptions, or feedstock shortages increase, their impact can reach even the final tablet of medicine. The reports that emerged over the past few days expose this vulnerability of the pharma sector even more. The government is considering the possibility of using the Essential Commodities Act to regulate the prices of bulk drugs and active pharmaceutical ingredients, that is APIs, to prevent hoarding and curb black marketing. According to an Economic Times report, the Department of Pharmaceuticals has held meetings with industry stakeholders, and Pharmexcel chairman 𝐮𝐸𝐽𝐸𝐿 has also confirmed that such discussions have taken place. An important thing to note is that this should not yet be seen as a final, notified decision. Right now, it is still at the stage of the government is considering it. But the very fact that this idea has surfaced shows that the situation is not being seen as ordinary. Now understand this. The relationship between the Essential Commodities Act and pharma is not new. The historical connection between drugs and the price control framework has long been linked to this broader legal structure. The Drugs Prices Control Order 2013 was also issued under the Essential Commodities Act, and the NPPA regulates ceiling prices within this very framework. That means if the government moves ahead in the direction of intervention in the matter of bulk drugs or APIs, its logic will not be standing on completely unfamiliar legal ground. The only difference is that this time, the trigger is not inflation or a normal shortage, but a combination of the changing geopolitical situation in West Asia, feedstock disruptions, and speculative pressure. The root of the problem is not just one factor. Reports coming from the industry suggest that the ongoing West Asia conflict has increased pressure on the availability of critical raw materials. The supply of some chemicals, solvents, and intermediates needed to make APIs and formulations is under strain. At the same time, factors such as PNG shortage, container shortage, vessel movement disruptions, and a weak rupee have pushed costs even higher. Reuters also reported that the government gave a temporary customs duty exemption on critical petrochemical products, because global supply chains were being disrupted due to the West Asia conflict and downstream industries, including pharmaceuticals, were facing cost pressure. That means the government is not just sitting and watching. Some relief measures have already been activated. The government recently decided to completely waive customs duty on 40 critical petrochemical products until the 30th of June 2026. Both PIB and Reuters described this as targeted temporary relief, aimed at maintaining the availability of critical inputs for domestic industry, reducing cost pressure on downstream sectors, and preserving supply stability. At first glance, this may look like a technical policy change, but in reality, it means that the government is acknowledging that the stress on the raw material side is real. When the government waives import duty, it is indirectly accepting that the industry has already reached a point where it needs breathing space. Then the question comes, just how much has inflation risen on the raw material side? According to industry reports, API prices have seen an average jump of 30 to 35% in the past few weeks. In some inputs, the increase has been even more dramatic. The price of glycerine has reportedly risen by around 64%. Paracetamol has become nearly 25% more expensive, and ciprofloxacin prices have gone up by around 30%. The packaging side has not been spared either. Prices of packaging materials such as PVC and aluminum foil have reportedly risen by nearly 40%. Now think about it. When the core raw material of a formulation, its solvent, its excipient, and its packaging all become expensive at the same time, how can pressure not build up on the finished medicine? This is where the biggest fear connected to the common person's pocket begins. Looking at a strip of medicine, the consumer thinks they are simply buying a tablet. But behind that strip lie many layers. Raw chemical, processing solvent, packaging film, aluminum foil, freight, warehousing, compliance, working capital, and the distribution network. If even 2 or 3 of these layers become expensive, the manufacturer comes under pressure. If the manufacturer comes under pressure, the distributor tries to protect their margin. If the distributor becomes uncertain, stockists start behaving cautiously. And if stockists feel prices will rise further, the temptation to hoard also starts to emerge. This is the chain reaction that the government may want to nip at an early stage itself. The special feature of the pharma sector is that every price rise cannot easily be passed on to the consumer. In India, many essential medicines are price regulated. The NPPA framework sets ceiling prices, and companies cannot freely go above that ceiling. On the surface, this is a good thing in the interest of patients, but during a crisis it can increase pressure on the manufacturer. If input costs rise sharply and the price flexibility of the finished medicine remains limited, margins start getting squeezed. This can be an especially difficult situation for small and mid-sized manufacturers. That is why industry bodies are asking for logistics support, freight subsidy, raw material allocation, and pandemic-like operational exemptions. Pharmexcel has demanded priority allocation of critical chemicals, such as propylene, methanol, ammonia, and butane, for the pharma sector, so that the production of solvents and APIs is not disrupted. This demand is not just for industry comfort, but for supply continuity. If the solvent chain breaks, then liquid medicines, syrups, oral drops, sterile preparations, and many other formulations can be affected. That means the problem may not remain limited to 1 or 2 expensive specialty drugs. It can reach the routine medicine basket too. And if this routine basket gets affected, then health inflation becomes a very big social issue. During COVID, India had seen that by giving the supply chain the operational priority of an essential category, manufacturing could be protected. Remembering that experience, the pharma industry is once again seeking similar exemptions that would reduce obstacles in production, movement, logistics, and feedstock access. The only difference is that then the public health emergency was a pandemic, and today the trigger is geopolitical conflict and industrial feedstock disruption. But the lesson remains the same. Pharma cannot be treated like an ordinary commercial sector, because its failure does not affect just business loss, it affects patient access. Now let us come to the possibility over which the debate is the sharpest. If the government really intervenes on bulk drugs or APIs under the Essential Commodities Act, what could that practically mean? One meaning could be increased inventory monitoring. Second, a stronger legal watch on hoarding and black marketing. Third, sending a market signal to curb speculative price spikes. Fourth, closer tracking of the movement and availability of some critical inputs or stocks. And fifth, treating pharmaceutical raw materials strictly as a public interest commodity. It is not necessary that the government directly fix the price of every product. But the moment the name of the ECA comes up, the market gets the message that free-for-all pricing and stock hoarding will no longer be tolerated. That signaling many times can be as powerful as the policy itself. But the other side of this story should also be understood. Not every price increase happens because of hoarding. Many times, genuine scarcity, freight disruption, insurance cost, currency depreciation, chemical diversion, and import bottlenecks are also the reasons. If the government imposes overly aggressive controls and manufacturers or importers no longer get viable economics, then the opposite danger can arise. Supply itself may shrink. That is why experts are repeatedly saying that what is really needed is not an indiscriminate crackdown, but smart calibration. That means strictness where there is speculative stockpiling, relief where there is a genuine raw material crunch, duty or logistics support where import costs are causing pressure. And where patient-facing medicines are under threat, there should be a protective shield of price stability. That is why the government's parallel strategy at this moment looks interesting. On one side, there are reports of considering a strict option like the Essential Commodities Act, and on the other side, a relief step like customs duty waiver has already come forward. That means the approach does not appear to be only punishment-based, but balancing-based. The government perhaps understands that the pharma value chain is under pressure at many points at once. Raw material, solvent, packaging, logistics, gas, imports, and financing. In such a situation, only one stick or only one subsidy will not be enough. What is needed is a mixed response. There is another big angle hidden in this entire story. India's image as the pharmacy of the world. India supplies affordable generic drugs to the whole world. If the domestic manufacturing chain is affected because raw materials become expensive or because of stock disruptions, then the impact may not remain limited to Indian patients. It could also affect export commitments. Business Standard recently reported that if the West Asia conflict drags on, Indian drug makers could face losses running into hundreds of millions of dollars, while India's share of pharma exports to the 1A region is also significant. That means this is not just an internal inflation story, but also a global trade story. Now think about that manufacturing unit where, on one side, the raw material supplier is changing quotations every hour. On the other side, the packaging vendor is giving a new rate. Shipping is uncertain on the third side, and on the fourth side, regulated medicine prices are not allowing the company to revise rates freely. In such a situation, the question before management is not just one of margin, but one of continuity. Which line should be run first? Which product stock should be preserved? Which order should be given priority? And which medicine should reach which patient and at what price? That is why the industry is calling this not just a commercial disruption, but systemic pressure. For the ordinary viewer, the biggest question is this: will medicines become more expensive? The honest answer is that the pressure is real, But the final impact will depend on how long the conflict continues, how quickly raw material flow returns to normal, how much effect the duty relief shows, and how strictly the government acts against hoarding or speculative price spikes. If the supply chain stabilizes relatively quickly, then there is no need for panic. But if disruptions continue for long, then the effect of cost pressure may be seen in some formulations and categories. It must also be remembered that the impact on regulated essential medicines and market-priced non-scheduled drugs will not be the same. In fact, this entire crisis has once again exposed an old weakness in India's pharma model. Its formulation strength is very strong, but raw material self-reliance is still incomplete. Schemes like bulk drug parks and policies like PLI, aimed at boosting domestic API manufacturing, are efforts to reduce this weakness. The government is already running schemes to increase domestic manufacturing of critical KSMs, drug intermediates, and APIs. But such capacity is not built overnight. Today's headline may be about the Essential Commodities Act, but the real long-term story is that of a self-reliant API ecosystem. Until that becomes strong, every major geopolitical shock will keep finding a way to reach the price of medicine. If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you, because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible. But in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.